All right, welcome to the Max Effort Kitchen podcast. This is the For the Love of Food show. We are going live for the very first time. I am Matt. This is Sarah. We are your hosts for the day. Sarah, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. The energy is chaotic, so you're welcome.
Hey, it wouldn't listen. I love chaotic energy. Obviously, you do too, because that's why we work in kitchens. But and that's what it is. It's controlled chaos, right? That's all. That's all that is. But chaos is an interesting thing to be able to wrangle in when you're in a kitchen, when you're working in a restaurant, when you're cooking for your family and all that, because something I've noticed, and I've created this. I'm still working on it and refining it, but it's definitely usable. This little kitchen behind me, where I have a pizza oven. Pizza oven gets up to like 900 degrees. I got a baker's table. I got and then I got like an industrial mixer. That's all I need. But I still have noticed that I'll pop the garage door open and I'll be making pizza, or we'll be doing dough. My mind lives in chaos when I'm cooking. And I know that because I start sweating a little bit. I start moving really quick. And when I'm cooking at home, I really, really be like conscious of like cooling it down, like taking a deep breath. It doesn't have to be made right now. I don't have customers waiting for me. There's no tickets coming up. This is on my time. Yeah. And so being able to have that transition is a bit of a thing. But I made pizzas last night for the family, and I really, I feel like I've crossed that bridge because I had everything set up perfectly. I was patient of letting the pizza oven get up to, I think I got it up to 800 degrees, and it cooked the pizza better. I was nice and slow and methodical. I had a nice table laid out. So I'd take the pizza out, I'd throw it on the table, I'd just cut it, and kids would come and grab slices. And it was a lot of fun. And I made 4 pizzas. And it was fun. And it was like, it felt, I had some some Bob Marley on in the background. It was like nice, chill feeling. It was kind of a little bit cooler in the air like yesterday. I don't know. I mean, how, like when you're cooking at home, I know you do this because you sent me a great picture of you and your friend making some pizza dough. Like, do you feel the same pressures at home?
It depends on the day and the headspace and the vibes. Because when I'm really busy and I'm just trying to speed cook as fast as possible because I have to run out the door as soon as people are fed, then I don't quite melt into the cooking as much. Like you said, it's more of that controlled chaos. I'm just reacting to things like at a very fast pace. Sometimes, like a lot of the time, I'll even be multitasking in the kitchen. But my favorite thing to do, like when I'm cooking, is just let it completely absorb me and just melt into this space where just like everything else just fades away. And it's this level of conscious focus. Like there'll be times, like the other day, for instance, I was cooking for 8 hours straight. I didn't eat anything. I kind of completely just lost track of time. All of a sudden, and then I've got dinner. It's almost done. I'm about to take a breath. I'm just all like, wait a second. I'm kind of a little bit extra starving. Oops.
Yeah. That's interesting because I'm a little bit different in that sense to where when I'm cooking, I'm always eating. So I'm like, I obviously, the kind of thing of where you're like, you're always tasting your food. You always taste first, season last. Taste first, season last. That's kind of the repetition. But I find that when I cook these large meals, or when I'm in the kitchen for a long time, like this is a very true statement when I cook Thanksgiving dinner. Because I cook everything. I cook it all. Turkey to everything to desserts, everything.
That's and what it's nobody's coming in my kitchen on
exactly. And so when that happens, I'm eating throughout the day. I'm tasting things, I'm putting things in my mouth, I'm testing the turkey. I'm, eating chocolate chips. There's all kinds of food going in, but by the time we sit down for a meal, I don't want to sit down and eat.
Yeah.
I'll
do that too. And I'll just be like running around making sure everybody's okay. But like food is like it's the first thing and the last thing on my mind. It's really interesting.
It really is.
I like fluctuate between the two states. I'll melt into this like hyper focus where like I'm tasting, but like not a lot. Like I'm tasting and thinking, but at the same time, like I'm not actually eating that much. And then like when it's more of that chaos, I'm tasting all the time. It's very fast paced. And by the time it's over, I'm exhausted. I'm full. I just like, it's just really interesting. Just like how the headspace affects your process of cooking for the day.
Yeah, it really does. And I honestly think that if you just don't have that right headspace, then like it's going to be tough at certain points to conceptualize a recipe, to understand, where you're off, what needs to happen. There's going to be probably a couple dishes that are going to be a little subpar. Not to say that's a bad thing, but hey, our drive and our passion in the kitchen is to create something to feed the soul. And so like, we don't want to ever put anything out there that's subpar.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting topic. I bet we could probably build an entire podcast series just on that. But we were having a great conversation prior to pressing record that I kind of wanted to continue. And you had brought up a story about how, at your place of work, you were indulging in a conversation with a customer about food and everything. And they made the comment to you. What was the comment?
They were trying to set me up with their son because I'm a good cook and would make a good housewife.
So I've been hearing this term on the internet and on all the socials and all that called it's trad dad and trad wife.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I do consider myself a bit of a trad dad, but there are a lot of things about my life that are very untraditional in the dad sense. And to me, like, first of all, I think that's a great compliment. I think to have somebody say that to you is a great compliment.
It was very flattering, I must say.
Yeah. I mean, they're recognizing that you have a passion for something and you're good at it. And they're like, I want to control my child to be with a good person, so you can't really be too upset about it. And, but I do think that the idea of a stereotype, because we cook means we're homemakers is a double-edged sword. It's a great thing to be a homemaker. I am very proud of the home and the family that I have been a part of creating with my wife and kids and everybody. And, but that, there's certain stereotypes that I don't fall in. And I think a lot of people think because you cook means you should be a stay at home, or you should be you would be a great wife to stay home with a bunch of kids and, and feed my child. Like, what's your thought on all that?
Well, I had thoughts and now they're gone. Like when you have the thoughts and then you say the thoughts and then all of a sudden it's like, what did I say again?
Yeah.
But, okay, give me a sec.
Yeah. You're good. The idea, I think what we were really focusing on is like how it was a compliment, but like just because you cook doesn't mean you have to be in the kitchen.
That was it. Just because I cook, it doesn't mean I view food quite in that specific.
There you go.
Because when you dip into taking these stereotypes too seriously, you almost mentally box somebody in to what they can and can't do and how they can or can't view something. Because I view food on so many levels. Yes, I do view food on like wanting to feed my family and make them happy and help support them and bring them smiles. But I view it on such a social and scientific and artistic level that when it's brought down to stereotypes, almost gets a bit dismissed. And that isn't like completely a negative thing because, sometimes people like think in these boxes without realizing it. So like no shade at all. But it's just an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of generational thinking as well.
Yeah.
Times are different now. And, I know. So, and I'll tell you a little story here. When Maddie was born, we knew Maddie had a disability. We knew it was there. She got tested when she was in Alana's belly. So we knew what was going on. We knew also that we did not want to put Maddie into childcare the first, year and a half, 2 years of her life. Like, cause there was already enough challenges on top of, being a newborn, and we both worked. And so Alana and I looked at each other and we were like, hey, over a course of a little bit of time. And we figured out that it would be more profitable for our family if Alana stayed in her job and I quit my job. And so at the time I was a food and beverage manager at the Marriott. And, I was building something really great there. And I was starting to get to a point where I could probably transfer into a higher level position. And at that point in my life, I was 29. And I was really ambitious, and I wanted to keep climbing, and I wanted to have experiences, but having a child was much more important to me. Yeah. And so what we did was we said, Alana, you're going to go to work and I'm going to stay home with Maddie. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to stay home with Maddie, and we will budget. We will make it work. And that's all there is to it. And so I did that. Best experience of my life. But what I will say is I did get, it's interesting. I did get some criticism from older generations in my family, from people that at my previous jobs, of like, wait, you're staying home? Why you're the man? Why are you staying? And I'm like, whoa, I'm a parent first, like at the end of the day, my child means more. But, and this has a point. I stayed home. I was completely jobless, nothing, doing anything, hanging out with Maddie, taking care of her, up all night, doing all that stuff. About 3 months in, I was like, you know what? I think I can do more. So I took the opportunity, and that's when I went to culinary school at night. And so Alana and I would she would get off of work, come through the door, we would high five, I would go to school. And we did that for about 2 years. And I got my culinary degree. Coming out of that, it was the best thing I ever did. I would stay home with Maddie during the day, go to school at night, come home, do homework till about 1 o'clock. Usually and Maddie would wake up for her like nighttime feeding around 1:32. I would feed her and I would fall asleep together. And then we'd wake up around 6, and it would start getting our day going a little bit. And that was kind of the routine. But I tell you this because I think you're right. People they don't mean to put you in a stereotype or in this box, but when they do, and then they look at what you're doing, you got to take these ideas that, because of what you identify as means that's what you should be doing. To me, I'm just like, I'm a person. Exactly. I'm going to do what's in my heart.
You can do whatever you want to, like.
Exactly.
The only person who can determine what you can and can't do is yourself. Like, it's very hard when people are telling you there's certain ways you have to be and certain things you have to do. But at the end of the day, it's what makes you happy. And it's what at the end of your life will make you feel fulfilled. Correct.
And if there's one thing I can say with all honesty that you and I align very well on is food makes us happy.
Yep.
And so by that whole story was all based around the idea that like life brings you certain things. And when you're faced with a challenge in life, take the challenge and don't hide from it, because you never know what amazing thing can come out of that. And I'm telling you, like, I'd been in the food and beverage industry for 7 years prior, just kind of working my way up. No culinary degree, no real base. But that going to school and getting the connections and learning technique and base and everything, it just propelled my career so much. And I was 30 years old when I went to school.
Yeah.
So I want anybody listening to this and understand that there's no time limit on that. Like, you can go at any time. I personally think that was the best time for me to go. It was when I had direction. It was when I had maturity. It was when I had purpose. And because I went to college right out of high school and like played football and there was just no direction. I was still personally too immature to understand what college was about. So anyways, let's get on to that got a little deep there.
I mean, as it should though.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Exactly. So we got a fun show, pizza dough. I'm just going to say 72-hour fermented dough. I'll go through it first because I think when you picked the recipe, I had you go through it. So I'll go through this first and I'll summarize what we did. Basically, I sent Sarah a recipe for a 72-hour fermented dough. What this means in terms of pizza dough. Well, first let me back up and I'll go through the ingredients. The ingredients are yeast, water, flour, salt. And what you do is a two-step process. You take a third of the yeast, a third of the water, and a third of the flour, and you mix it the day before. And now, mind you, Sarah, I've had a lot of experience. So if I start talking about how I did stuff differently, that's okay. I want you to. This is all about a compare and contrast. So what I do when I make this is I take that water, yeast, flour, I put it all into the mixing bowl, and I use my hand and I just mix it around, and then I cover it. And I usually use like and this is one thing that people don't sometimes do, but I use a trash bag. But if you're going to do that, use a non-scented trash bag.
Oh my God. Yeah, no.
They make these Febreze trash bags out there that are just like, don't use those.
Those things, like, they're so strong to give me a, okay.
Yeah. So just a regular non-scented trash bag, put it over and leave it at room temperature overnight. And you'll see when you come back out to look at it, that dough has probably grown by 100%. And it's not the dough that's necessarily growing, but it's all the gases being released. And so it looks like kind of like molten lava, white molten lava to me. From there, we take the rest of the yeast, water, flour, and salt, and we put it in there and we put it through a mixing cycle on the mixer. And then from there, things get really interesting. The dough has a mind of its own because of the hydration level, and it literally moves like slime almost. It takes a little bit of extra flour to really manipulate it. But from there, I did a bulk ferment. So I take what's in that mixing bowl, I put it in a big container, and I put it in the fridge for another 24 hours. So we're 2 days in now. Third day, what I'm doing is I'm taking it out of that big bin of the bulk ferment, and then I'm taking it and I'm shaping it into the size of bread, or for my case, pizza dough for the balls that I want. And I was doing 10-ounce balls, so I was cutting, weighing 10-ounce balls, rolling them up, throwing them in, and then I put them on a sheet pan, an oiled sheet pan, threw it back in the refrigeration. That was day 3. So then the very next day, they're done. They're ready to go. They're ready to cook. You can make focaccia. You can make I've made like little pita pockets with it, because if you don't put anything in it and you put it in a really high heat oven, what it does is it blows up like this big pillow. And it's really neat because you can take it out and you cut that open and you stuff it with things, and you have like this like pita pocket type thing with this great bread. Some of the things that I really like about this recipe, the flavor of the crust is absolutely worth the 3-day process. the texture on how it's crispy on the outside and really airy in the middle. You can eat a 12-inch pizza and not even feel like you ate a 12-inch pizza.
Yeah.
I can vouch for that. But also there's an artistry to this. The smells, the textures, the hands-on that you have to do. I had a lot of fun with it personally. I mean, I love this recipe, and I've done this recipe in a restaurant before. Not this exact one, but it was a different one. But it worked pretty close to the same. I really liked it. I cooked it in a pizza oven. Now I know you did. You cooked it in a home oven, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to hear about your experience. What? How'd you feel here?
So there was a couple of things because I was trying to decide what to use this pizza dough for, right?
Yeah.
Like I've never really worked with dough very much. This is probably the most involved dough I've ever made. There's a
Mhm.
couple things that I noticed when making the dough itself, like the amount of salt you put in. I was scared for a second, I tasted the dough as soon as I put the salt in. I'm just like, oh, I just gotta trust the process, man. By the time the last ferment was over, the saltiness was perfect. And I thought that
Mhm.
was so interesting. Like, where did all the salt go? Did it get eaten? Did it evaporate? It was like mind boggling.
Yeah.
The other thing is like I noticed, and since I'm not very experienced with dough, I could have messed up like the gluten development a tiny bit somewhere.
Okay.
In my home oven, we have like a 1950s home oven. Like it's like
Love that.
also I'm like in tune with my oven. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like
Yeah.
I know exactly when to pull stuff out of that oven. I never
Mhm.
mess stuff up in that oven. And else's oven, it's way harder for me because I know my oven front to back. But
This
anyway, I
this is the
found
thing. I'm sorry to interrupt,
go
but
ahead.
what you're doing, it's called managing the variables. But this is a big thing. I can cook better in my house than I can in somebody else's house.
Yeah.
So sorry, interrupted. Keep going.
You're all good. So like I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do because I'm with this pizza dough because it was
Mhm.
enough pizza dough that I could like do a couple different things with it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of marinating on all of this. No pun intended, but
Yeah.
Um,
I like it.
and the first thing I was thinking of, because on the side, I've been learning a lot about, different pH balances and structures of a lot of different foods like vegetables and meats and like all these different, like very scientific molecular factors that go into, making a dish.
Right.
And I was learning that the most tender meat you will ever eat is dark and cat fat meat that has a lot of collagen in it that is just salt water boiled. And I'm not exactly sure the exact science behind why, but I'm wondering if it has something to do with pH balance and salinity and like all that stuff because acid and bases will affect the breakdown of certain nutrients in food.
Yep.
So I decided to do a little bit of experiment and I was going to slow boil this leg of lamb I found in salt water, well, slow simmer specifically for
Yeah.
hours, just completely break down that collagen into gelatin.
Mhm.
And I thought it'd be a really nice blank canvas with a little bit of gaminess, nicely salted, really tender to kind of envelope in a lot of flavor.
Yeah.
So went ahead and I made an orange salsa with Valenciaga oranges. I used Serrano chilies that I just lightly pickled in a 10% acidity, which has another story behind it because I didn't know you could lightly pickle stuff with such a low acidity, which is
Yes.
mind-boggling because
Yes.
usually I use like a 30 to 50%, but like you couldn't even taste the vinegar and it got really spicy and it was amazing.
That sounds great.
And I did cilantro and green onion and I just like added in a little bit of lime juice, the lightly pickled serranos, and a little bit of the pickling juice, and let marinate for an hour. But we have a lot of soft, juicy ingredients, so I decided to make pitas out of half of the pizza dough to kind of like make almost like a gyro wrap type of deal.
Yeah.
They wanted something a little bit more structured to hold up against all of this softness. Like they went with a really soft pita or flatbread. It would just kind of like all melt apart. But this is the really interesting thing when it came to the dough. Oh, side note, I also I did a crushed garlic, olive oil, sea salt, and sesame seed paste that I rubbed on top of the pitas to give it a little bit more flavor.
Oh, I love that.
The flavor was insane with that. Like I wanted, because I was thinking about the cornmeal crust that I've had on some pizzas, which is like so good, like a thin crust cornmeal, like with a little bit of cornmeal that was breaded in. I just love that texture. So I thought I'd use the sesame seeds to give it a little bit more texture also.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
love it. Yeah, that's great.
Interesting thing was this was day 3 of the pizza dough process.
Okay.
And the gluten structure was incredibly intense.
Yep.
It was so chewy, and I thought it was really interesting because I'd never worked with a dough that was quite that chewy. So unfortunately, it kind of drowned out the lightness of everything, but it was just kind of amazing. But by the time I used the rest of the pizza dough on day 5, the gluten content was more manageable. And which is when I went and made these pizzas. I did a date, goat cheese, honey, and goat cheese, honey, and then I did coconut sugar cardamom ground beef pizzas with a bunch of sauce. Amazing. Added in some cilantro, a little squeeze of lemon. It was great. But I wish I had swapped the order because that would have been even better with a stronger gluten content, and the other one would have been better with a softer gluten content. So I wanted your expertise on like why exactly did that happen? Why did the gluten content relax over the days? And is that a usual thing, or was there some sort of variable that I wasn't tracking?
It is. So let me ask you this, because I didn't see the dough in the raw form. When you took it out of that bulk ferment, did it look like
spiderweb?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it look like spiderweb? Okay, so that's great. So all that meant was the temperature. So the reason why it on day 5 it was perfect is because it might have been the temperature of the water that you used might have been a little too warm, or the temperature of which it was being stored might not have been consistent. The one thing that we have in restaurants that we don't have in our homes is very consistent refrigeration. And so our home refrigerators are good, but those things can bounce from they can have a variance from like 47 degrees to like 38 degrees. And dough is very, it's a creature, and when it has variability in temperatures like that, it can tend to, produce different results. And so what I would say is, and I learned about this equation, and I've never done it. It seems a little impractical to me, but you can find out so you take like the heat of the flour, the heat of the yeast, the heat of the friction in your mixer, and the heat of the external temperature, and then the heat of water, and you plug it into this equation, and it tells you how you should store it in refrigeration, or what temperature you should store it at. And so I'll share that with you after we get off here, and I'll send you the little blurb that I found about that. But what I would probably say is your refrigerator was probably there was probably a temperature that the dough didn't like, and that's it.
And so what gets really cold, like if it gets overfilled, stuff will freeze. And I don't know.
Yeah, and so that's very typical to a home refrigerator. So what I would say is make everything colder. Next, if you do this again, put your flour in the refrigerator overnight before you use it. So that way everything has that kind of even temperature. Put your flour in there, put your water in there. I always keep my yeast in the refrigerator anyways. And put your salt in there. And that way everything is a consistent, and it's rising and going up and down at the same speed. So I would say that's probably why. That's my 95% answer right there, because until I see the environment. And this is also a good point too, that dough is a product of their environment. The dough I make here versus the dough you make there, 2 separate doughs, because there is natural yeast in the air. The natural fermentation that's going on when we left it out overnight at room temperature, the ozone, like everything that's going on in my garage or in my house versus everything that's going on are different. Those zones are just like, they have different yeast. They have different what am I trying to say? I'm blanking on the word. I will remember it, but they just have different air.
Also,
What's that?
humidity.
Yes, humidity is different. Our
Yeah.
water is probably a little different, even though I think we live pretty close. Might be pulling off the same well, but the air is different. The water is different. The humidity is different. It's just, it would be impossible for you and me to create the exact same dough.
Yeah.
And you know, with the company that I work for, we have 11 locations. And this is a talked about subject all the time because we'll be like, all right, you know, our Hillsdale store has the best dough. And then it flops for some reason. And it's like, oh, our Westmoreland store has the best dough. But like, and it's all, dough is a product of its environment. And so maybe your environment just meant that the dough needed to rest a little bit more. And that could be it. Did you use an electric mixer or did you knead by hand?
I did an electric mix. Well, I did it in an electric mixer. Yeah.
How fast did you get that mixer going?
I kept it pretty low because if I remembered right, that was the best for dough to kind of like mimic, you know, a kneading environment and not get the temperature too high. So I think I did it on a level 2 or level 3.
Perfect.
I did it like just above.
Yeah, I wouldn't say ever go over 3, because again, it's like those glutens just need to relax. And as you noticed, on day 5, it was perfect, right? Like it was like where you wanted it to be. So it's a good lesson in dough. And I'm glad that we started with this one because of the fact that like this probably, I mean, you know, I know you know your food, you know your science behind it. But if I'm to guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably learned something about dough here.
I did. Like, I feel like at this point you need to get to know your environment and how the dough will react to just trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just kind of use that to, and then I feel like the more you make dough, the more you can just like intuitively recognize different environments and the different factors, even if it might be exact, you'll just have like an understanding.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, think about it. There's a restaurant, a little pizza parlor restaurant in Rhode Island. It's in Mystic and I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's been around for like 110 years or something like that. And they do a coal-fired pizza. You will never taste pizza as good as or as the way that they make it.
Yeah.
Because their environment is, I mean, they have it down. Their environment is what it is, and their environment creates the flavor in that pizza. You would never be able to take that recipe, bring it over here, and me make it, or you make it, or somebody else make it. It would just never taste the same or react the same. And so that's why these pizza, like, you know, if you're opening a pizza place, find a place that you're going to stay for a long time because you really want to, like, over the years, your position in where you're at in the world is going to help flavor and develop your dough. It just makes a whole lot of sense.
That is just, it's so interesting because I never really thought about dough like that. And yeah, like it's just completely an organic being almost. Now that we're talking about it, it really is like so fascinating.
Yeah. And that's why it's its own, it's alive. It really, really is. And if you go to my the YouTube on here, you'll see a picture of a industrial sized dough bowl where I was playing around. I opened a restaurant called Biga for the company that I'm with, and I was running it, but that's where this recipe came from. And Biga just translates as like the beginning process. It's the fermenting process of the dough. And anyways, you'll see that dough bowl poured over and it looks like the blob is coming out. And it's just really a beautiful picture. And I had to have, in order, I made 96 dough balls a day. And I had to have a 10-foot long table. It was about 6 feet wide in order to roll all this dough out. And it was a very intimate process. We opened at 3:00. Okay. And so I would get there at about 11 o'clock. I'd start making the dough. and I'd have dough that I was making for the next day, and I'd have 3 processes. So I'd have, the first day, the second day, and then the third day is what I was rolling out. And I just constant cycle. But there was like this moment in my day where the dough is out and I'm rolling, and I got I think maybe at the time I was listening to a lot of classical music. Some classical music. I'm the only one in the restaurant. I have this beautiful baker's table, and I'm just sitting there, and it's just such a serene moment of like, this is it right here. Like, I get goosebumps thinking about it, because it just, it was such a moment of like, this is something that is being created by food. Like, this whole feeling right now is being created by food. And my hands were a part of that. My brain was a part of that, and my heart was everywhere around it. So it's a really neat experience, and I'm so glad I did it. But dough has a mind of its own, and that's why I love it so much, is because you don't control it. It controls you. 100%. Like, it's like, well, let's see how this turns out. I hope you do good. And it will tell you. And the more you work with it, especially in your own environment, you're going to find consistencies. You're going to be able to manage the variables. You're going to understand where your water temperature needs to be versus, how cold your refrigerator is and all that. I encourage everybody to play with dough and just get into it. Like, make something, have fun with it, taste it. Okay, make a note. How can I make this better? Like, what happened this time?
I feel like the term like play with it is also very key, because if you go in with such like high expectations and like the stress of it has to turn out this way right now, then that just sucks all the fun out of it. But just like learning and playing and experimenting and keeping that perspective in your headspace is really, really key, especially like with dough in general and a lot of different cooking things. All
food, right?
Yeah.
All of it. Like, and you make such a great point, and thank you for saying that, because holy crap, like, I'm guilty of it. I've walked into a kitchen and I've produced something and I've walked out very grumpy.
Yeah.
Like, don't anybody talk to me. I need some air. And it's all in your mindset. It's because I had the mindset of going in there and being like, oh, I know, I got this. But you gotta really like hone in your mindset in the kitchen. And that's kind of where we started with this, right? Like, the controlled chaos of really honing in like what you're doing and what your objective is and why you're in the kitchen. And those things all revolve around the name of this podcast, For the Love of Food, right?
We should have a podcast about cooking, meditation, and headspace, because it's all so connected.
I mean, I'm a big proponent of meditation. I find it to be one of the most useful tools a person can have, as long as you can accept what it is. I mean, if a person doesn't believe in it, that's their prerogative, and I don't judge. But for me personally, I love it.
Yeah, it's just a second to explore your mind and find out, like, you're learning about your mind. It's basically mind exercise, man.
Yeah, it really is. And it's I find there's many forms of meditation. I like a lot of them. I find that when I'm in the kitchen, that's part of a form of meditation for me. And it feeds my soul. It feeds my heart. It feeds my brain. And I just come out of it in most cases, like a little bit better in life. And that's what it's all about, right? We have one life to live. And so it's like, or one life on this earth, or whatever whatever you believe. But there's only one chance we get in this realm. And I want to take advantage of it. And I want to work on those things that I love. And I'm sure you probably feel the same way.
Right there with you.
All right. So I'll post some pictures of my pizzas. I'll post some pictures. I've been posting the doughs. Like the other night, I did a 72% hydration level, and we can talk about that on another show, what the hydration levels mean. But we got to get our next show scheduled. I know you have a topic you want to talk about, but here I got some homework for you. And
no, man, I just graduated. What are you doing to me? No.
Okay. Let me rephrase that. I have something for you to explore. How about that?
I like that.
Okay. I'm sorry. That was very insensitive to me because I should know. You're like, I just got done with school. Leave me alone with homework.
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, no, it's good. I like it. So there is a food documentary, and if you don't have Apple TV, I will share my login with you so you can watch it. I am 4 episodes into it. The first episode is 52 minutes long, and it's about peppers. And it's called, yeah. Oh, and you're going to walk away from this just like tingling. But it's called Omnivore. And I can't even explain it. It's done with heart. It's done so artfully. There's so many things that's being said through the colors and through the videography and everything that's going on that is not being said with words. You learn about some history of the Tabasco pepper. You learn about the culture of the Thai peppers. But there's also so much more. And I could probably just give a lot of it away. I don't want to do that, but go check it out. The next episode was about tuna, and that was a lot about Japanese culture, which I want to rewatch that because I was kind of like multitasking when I was watching that one. Yeah. The following one was about salt and how salt is harvested, how it's made, where do we get salt? You know what I mean? Has anybody ever wondered where we get salt? Watch this episode because it is mind blowing. And the culture and the history behind all of this stuff that this chef is talking about. But I really want you to watch at least that first episode and let me know how you feel.
Like the history of salt is insane. Like it used to be worth as much or more than gold. Like,
they called it white gold. Yeah. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? Like, so definitely get out there and watch that. Like I said, if you need a login, I will share my login with you so you can watch it. I'm sorry, I will not extend that to everybody listening to this.
Sorry, guys. You're gonna have to
might jam up my system a little bit here, but yeah. So we're at about 42 minutes. Sarah, this has been a great show. I hope you learned something about dough. I hope it inspired you about dough.
I'm ready to get going. Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna get in the kitchen now.
Yeah, no, I'm literally going to be going in the kitchen now. I think I'm doing some chocolate chip cookies. So I promised.
Oh my God, I'm making a mango coconut risotto.
I'm going to share a video with you. I saw the best breakfast risotto this morning. That blew my mind. So I'm going to share that with you here in a second. But yes, everybody, this first live show, this was fun. I'm sure that there will be more live shows. In fact, we'll probably just do this from now on. But you can also find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, all of anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find this show. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Sarah, thank you so much for being here and just being open to trying some of my crazy stuff. And also sharing your knowledge and your experience and your perspective. It's all a very beautiful thing, and I appreciate it. So
I love finding people who are the same level of crazy as me. It's good for the soul.
It makes sense. It is really. So, all right. Well, everybody have a great day. Have a great night whenever you're listening to this, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.